This is where you can do some vocabulary building. This is where we can work on new sentence structures. Thinking of German, we often have trouble with dependent clauses. Real problem because of word order. This is where we can work on that. And also the new ideas situation. When we often talk about teaching literature or teaching culture, this is where we help them to develop these ideas and use a vocabulary that they may have learned. Without individual attention and sufficient feedback on errors, improvement will not take place. And I think that's pretty clear no matter what kind of testing or assessment we are doing. But this is also what I find most important within the process is to help the learners develop strategies for self-correction and regulation. In the drafting process is where they learn to recognize where their own weaknesses are and aren't always relying upon the instructor to show them where those weaknesses are. Now, we're talking theory here, right? For example, what I do here is I never pick out more than 3 problems at a time, because more than 3 becomes too much for them to really handle and work on. So if it is word order with dependent clauses, then that's what I want them to work on the next draft, for example. Maybe it's tense. 2 is good. I never try to give them more than 3, but I also point out to them what their major issues are. Not the holistic, German grammar, but what your issues are so that they can then self-identify what's going on with their own writing. Okay. Oh, wait, I'm going the wrong direction.
Excuse me.
Yes?
Excuse me.
Yeah.
What level are you talking about here?
Well, theoretically, all levels. This is the theory, is that we can do it at all levels. At the end, we will talk about how that plays out. Okay, I want to go back here. Okay. So this is where the student gets the individual feedback from the instructor. They're asked to do a revision, a second draft, and to edit. Again, this is the most difficult place right here, is to get the students to move beyond just what you've shown them. What happens often is they take care of every adjective ending, or they take care of every word tense, but they don't look at that piece as a holistic piece of structuring content. I don't have the answer for you, but right now this is what the research is telling us, is that this is really more difficult in the L2 than in the L1. All right. Okay. I have steps here, and I should have the word routines. And this is not in any hierarchical order, though I have numbered them. These are just 6 routines that have been identified as routines of successful instruction. This we've all struggled with. Attract the student's attention with your writing assignment. It has to be meaningful to the student in some way. At the lower levels, this is usually personal information. At the higher levels, then it's relevant to what's been going on in the class, and we're all interested in the topic of the new Holocaust monument and what impact it's having, for example. Task assignment, again, this is research speak. Task assignment, what they mean is specificity, that the assignment must be quite specific so that the students know what they are doing. I'm not talking about using only the simple past or using only the subjunctive, but that the assignment and what they are to write about is specific enough that they can handle it. Collectively construct the interpretation. This goes back to the drafting and when you meet with the student. Collectively, either student to instructor. We'll talk briefly about peer editing. It may be student to student as well. Number 4, establish criteria. And Virginie's going to hand out for you, not my criteria for writing, but my colleague Anita McChesney's. And I have a feeling this may be where we spend the majority of our time. Why do you need to establish criteria? I do it still. I read a short piece, I put a number on it based on my feelings about how well the student managed to fulfill the assignment. Yeah? Anita has developed a very thorough and very extensive drafting criteria. I think that's good.
Same document.
Yep, same document. And I won't spend too much time yet. We can do that at the end. But you'll notice what Anita does for draft 1. That's the first page. The set of criteria with additional comments. But how does she get around this editing and revision issue of making sure that they address that? If you look at draft 2, at the bottom, now they get a grade for the kind of editing that they do. And the students know up front what the expectations are. Okay? And then finally, something that many of us have developed in our own ways, the abbreviations, right, to our notations. And that makes the grading process faster. And I think we're going to be talking about the grading process a lot. Okay? So that goes to how you're establishing your criteria. Another successful point of instruction is to provide individual feedback. And that means one-on-one meetings between instructor and student. And finally, guide the student's individual development rather than this is a 200-level course and normal issues at the 200-level course are X, Y, and Z, but rather helping the student to handle their individual issues. Okay? So, what is the instructor's perspective on all of this? Do I expect early mastery of the mechanical aspects of writing? Or do I pay little attention to correctness, at least until after a first draft has been written? This is the question that I will put to you as our activity to discuss. Okay? It comes to us every time we grade a paper. Well, I can tell you what the research says and what the research, how the research answers this question. Allow students time to reflect and seek input as they reshape plans, ideas, and language. And in classroom practice, the focus is on idea development, clarity, and coherence before grammar correction. So, that is my presentation to you, and we can then go back to this question. And what do you perhaps see as both challenges and rewards to treating writing as a process, where the process is the product rather than getting from assignment to final product? And please feel free to ask Anita any questions. She has agreed. As I twisted her arm to talk about it, because she does a lovely job of this in our advanced stylistics course. And does this process for every, you do 6?
7.
7. Yeah, 7 individual assignments.
One question that I have is the usual culprit, the time constraints. Because I know when you used them, it was one project for the entire semester. So it was based on one writing assignment.
That's
So
true.
you at least, although perhaps it's kind of quick for them to get to the idea stage so early in the semester, at least theoretically you would have more chance to, and more time to work through the steps. But I know especially in the composition class, you know, when you have one semester and 7 essays, but even if you only have 2 essays, and that's not the entire focus of the course, how then do you move quickly through the steps while allowing enough time for them? Yeah.
Well, number one, I think this, what you've developed, is key, so that you can quickly define. And again, everybody has to develop their own. What I do is once I have identified one kind of issue, I might identify it 2 or 3 times, but I do not identify it the 30 times that it takes place in a 5-page paper. That goes back to helping the students develop their own strategies. Now you're going to say, well, how does a student know that he or she is making that mistake? When I meet with them, I say, you'll notice here, you have used, I like to use a relative pronoun because our students, relative clauses. You need to keep your eye out for relative clauses. You need to think about